This is part 4 of freedomfirstparty.net. Well, we left off, we was talking about public officials under Title 22 CFR under foreign relations. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where a part of the issue is at and what we're dealing with. We've brought you so far up to the point of Federal Reserve Act of 1913. We have brought you up to the bankruptcy of 1933. We have sit here and brought you up to Social Security Act 1935. Alien Registration Act of 1940 that created the birth certificates. We've laid everything out. We brought up Title 22 USC Code under Section 1481 that dealt with foreign relations. All right, let me bring up some history here of 1867. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where a lot of it started at. 1867, under an act to provide for a more efficient government of the rebel states. An act to provide for a more efficient government of the rebel states. That was part of the Reconstruction Act of 1867. This is where the North went in, invaded the South, took over their governments after the Civil War, threatened the government that if they did not comply, they would literally shoot them. You had a choice. Either you give over your state sovereignty to the federal side, or you will be shot, and we will sit down and replace you. Now, does this sound familiar with what is happening right now in our own society? This is a prehistory. Also, the 14th Amendment came out of this. This is the separation between two units of people. This is where you had your federal citizen and you had your state nationals. Going back in under Title 22 CFR, Foreign Relations, under 92.12 to 92.30, this is the oath of office for these people. It goes in and it shows that you have to have three parties to this. One who gives you the oath, who has to sign it. One who takes the oath has to sign it. And the notary that notarizes and validates that everything was legitimate. And then it has to be filed with the court system. And see, this comes back under Title 5 USC Code under 3,331 to 3,333. Under 3,305, if they 3,351, they don't have an oath, they don't have a bond, they don't have a job. This is something that they set up. Everything that we have brought in to the first 3 discs, ladies and gentlemen, is not me saying it. I may be explaining it, but my references is out of their own written words. And that is what the key issue here is. They wrote it. They wrote it for their own rules. They wrote it for their own regulations. They wrote it for their guidelines on how they were to operate. This is why this is significant in understanding the historical side of this. Now, After 1867, with what they did, let's pop up to 1871. An act to provide a government for the District of Columbia. Prior to the District of Columbia was Washington and Georgetown, two separate towns. When they created the District of Columbia, they took a section out of both and made one called the District of Columbia. And we brought this up earlier, that you can look up on the internet for the boundary markers of the District of Columbia, and it talks about the 40 stones that were implanted around it. It went back and showed on the inside of them stones, it was the jurisdiction of the United States. On the back side, it was Maryland and Virginia. If the District of Columbia was part of the United States, why didn't they put the District of Columbia with Maryland on one side and Virginia on the other? Just like whenever you cross the borders, you'll say, welcome, entering into Maryland, entering into New Jersey, entering into Pennsylvania. In the District of Columbia, their stone says jurisdiction of the United States. These are key words. These are very important words. Because, ladies and gentlemen, you and I did not put them there. They did. They set their jurisdiction within that 10-mile square. Let's move up from 1871 to up to Title VIII, alien registration, which we talked about on the 1481, where they were required to relinquish their national citizenship. It wasn't an if you feel like it, if you want to. It was a law. They had to relinquish their national citizenship. It's not a choice. They had no choice. They want the job. They step out of the national side and step into the foreign state side of this. We're going to sit down and we're going to sit back and show you in 1945. Let me pull it up here a minute. (1945). 79th Congress, first session, Chapter 652, December 29th, 1945. To extend certain privileges, exemptions, and immunities to international organizations and to the officers and employees thereof, and for other purposes. There's that word again, for other purposes. What are these other purposes that they're not sitting here telling us? Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America and Congress assembled. There is no way that John Q. Public could have set this up any better than they have by laying it out in Congressional Records and admitting to the fraud and admitting to their own corruption. It has never been brought out. Nobody's ever put it together in the means that we have. But here it is, December 29th, 1945. They turned around and they passed it. They placed themselves under UN jurisdiction. They made themselves foreigners. They're trying to give themselves immunity. They're sitting here saying they're above prosecution. Ladies and gentlemen, that puts us back under the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act under Title 28 under 1602 to 1612. 1611. 1602 to 1611. Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act under Title 28. I want to bring something up to you, and I want to show you. Up on the internet. I'll show you how easy this is to find. Because I am not doing anything fancy. United States Constitution. Let me show you what the court system is hiding behind. Let me show you what they're trying to sit back and claim. This is something you need to understand, because this is the fraud of the court system. As you notice, Legal Information Institute, LII, again. Internet. It's their system. It's their program. It's their documents of what we're talking about. Article 3. Everybody knows what Article 3 is. The judiciary. Article 3, Section 1. Listen to the words as I read them. Listen very carefully. It's the first few words that we want to hear, but I'm going to break this thing down. Article 3, Section 1 is what created the court itself. It created the building. It did not fill the building. It created the building. The judicial power of the United States shall be invested in one Supreme Court, and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. What does that sit here and tell you? The judicial power of the United States shall be invested in one Supreme Court, and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. That means they're creating the building. They haven't filled the position. They've created the building. They created the ability for the court to exist. The judges, both of the Supreme Court and the inferior courts, shall hold their office during good behavior and shall, at stated times, receive for their services a compensation which shall not be diminished during their continuance in office. Good behavior. What does it mean, good behavior?
Follow the law.
Exactly. How many times as children, our mother or our father has taken a belt or a backhand and sit down and said, you are misbehaving. You're not behaving. You're not well-mannered. This is what it says. The judges of both the Supreme and inferior courts shall hold their office during good behavior. Good behavior means you do what you're told, you follow the rules, you follow the regulations, you follow the guidelines, and so far everything we have showed you, ladies and gentlemen, they have created it. They wrote the book. They have no excuse for sitting back and saying, we can't comprehend what we wrote. And that's exactly what they're trying to tell us. We can't comprehend. You're the one that wrote it. You're the educated people. How many years in college did you have compared to someone like myself who's only got a 12th grade education, who's got a degree in auto mechanics, who works with his hands? You guys went to school, and how much did you pay? $500,000, close to $1 million to a law school, and you can't read? You can't comprehend? I got 12th grade education. I'm comprehending pretty good what the law has says and what we're explaining to the people. Now, the point we're making is this. Article 3, Section 1 says judicial power of the United States. This is what created the court system. Section 2, there's those words again. The judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and in equity arising under this Constitution. What Constitution? This Constitution. The one that we're talking about. It ain't talking about Russia. It's not talking about China. It's not talking about Pakistan. It's not talking about England. It's talking about this Constitution, the one they swore an oath to. The laws of the United States, the treaties made, or which shall be made under their authority. The laws, the statutes at large, the treaties. This is what we have been reading in the last 3 sections. Statutes at large, their laws. So under Article 3, Section 2, it sits there and says the judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution, the laws of the United States, and treaties made or which shall be made under their authority, to all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers, and consuls, to all cases of admiralty in maritime jurisdiction, to controversies to which the United States shall be a party, to controversies between 2 or more states, between a state and a citizen of another state, between citizens of different states, between citizens of the same state claiming land under grant of different states, and between a state or the citizens thereof and foreign states, citizens or subject. Ladies and gentlemen, says controversies to which the United States shall be a party, to controversy between 2 or more states. Maryland, Virginia, Ohio, Colorado, New York, Minnesota, 2 states against one another. Now think about what this is sitting here saying. Then it continues and says, between a state and a citizen of another state. State and a citizen. Where does it sit here and say a citizen against the state? It's making the issue the state and citizen. It's the state that's bringing the claims. It's the state that's making an issue. All right? Between citizens of a different state, between citizens of the same state, claiming lands and grants under different states, and between states, or the citizens thereof, and foreign states. Now, keep that word in mind, foreign states, are what we're dealing with here. As citizens or subjects. All right. Normally they have a little thing in Article 3, Section 2 that shows that this was changed by the 11th Amendment. They usually have a little asterisk. Look in your Constitution, and there's a little star that comes back in. But I want to show you something here. Okay, it's not listed down there. Let me switch over here a minute.
Sometimes the originals have capitalizations in the middle of the sentence.
Well, they normally have one in there.
This might be a modern, more corporate version.
Yeah. All right, let me.
Maybe get original.
Hold on a minute. Technical difficulties, just hang in there. They don't like what we're exposing here.
Put in original?
Yes, it's in the original. They got a little star in the original.
In the original?
Yep.
So the Bill of Rights was done right away? Or they just went back and put a star in?
No, what they did is when they created the 11th Amendment was an amendment to the Constitution. All right.
When Joe and I filed our Declaration of Independence, I saw that there were different versions, some with capitalizations in the middle of the sentence, and it really shifted the emphasis of the meaning. But I haven't studied the Constitution's different versions.
All right. Well, let me find the one because it's in here, ladies and gentlemen. It really is. It's. For some reason, it got us kicked offline.
We're gonna have to cut some of this out so
Yeah.
we go a little longer.
Yeah. I wasn't planning on getting into. Because every one that I've ever come across has always sit back and showed. It says affected and changed by the 11th Amendment. It always had that little quotation in there that shows that it was always changed by the 11th Amendment.
Why don't you do another one?
All right.
Isn't it interesting how you're directed to this version only?
Let me bring you down to the 11th Amendment here.
Suits against the state.
Suits against the state. 11th Amendment. Notice the words here. The judicial power again. The judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity. Now, isn't that a contradiction to what we just read in Article 3, Section 2? It says the judicial power shall extend to all cases under this Constitution, under law and equity, under the laws of the United States, under admiralty, maritime controversies. Now under the 11th Amendment, it says the judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity, commence or prosecute against one of the United States by citizens of another state or by citizens or subject of any foreign state. Ladies and gentlemen, when we're walking into these courts, what they're doing to us is they're allowing that prosecutor to bring in an Article 3, Section 2 courtroom on their side of that courtroom. The moment you and I begin to speak, the judge throws the 11th Amendment on our side, and we was never aware of this. How many times have you heard a judge say, you can't bring the Constitution into this courtroom? You can't use the laws in this courtroom.
Every time in my court cases.
You can't bring equity into this courtroom. You can't bring maritime. You can't bring admiralty. We're not going to allow you to bring a controversy. Think about what he's sitting here telling you, and it never dawned on us, but right here it is, 11th Amendment. The courts are trying to come back and tell you this. Oh, what that means is that we can sue you. We can rape and pillage and plunder your side. But the 11th Amendment says you can't do that to us. That is not what the 11th Amendment says. I have yet to find that in any book that sits here and says the 11th Amendment allows them to rape, pillage, and plunder on our side of the fence. Read the 11th Amendment the way it is written. The 11th Amendment says the judicial power. What is the judicial power? Isn't that what the judge is claiming, jurisdiction? I'm the judge. I have judicial power in this courtroom. of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or inequity. When mom and dad tells you you shall not take the car, does that mean to go ahead and go for it? Absolutely not. When you're in the military and your DI sits there and tells you you shall not do this, does that mean to go ahead and do it anyhow? Absolutely not. Ladies and gentlemen, you and I did not write these words. Lawyers wrote it. Judges wrote it. Bar Association wrote it. This was not done by the common man. This was done by titles of nobility in violation of Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, or the original 13th Amendment, esquires. This is why this is significant, because Article 3, Section 1 created the court. It created the building. You and I have to sit here and hire these people to fill these jobs. Every November, whether it's 4 or 6 years, they come to us and they ask us to put them in office. That means that these people are employees. We're going to get into the private attorney general here in another segment. Because the private attorney general, Congress literally gave us, the people, the authority to operate as a private attorney general in 1866, and in Title 42, 1988, gave us the ability to walk into a court on any civil or criminal matter and operate on behalf of anybody as counsel. And the reason why the courts don't want us to do it is because they're running a closed union shop in violation of the Taft-Hartley Act of running a monopoly and the Smith Act of overthrowing the government, which we sit back and showed you under Title 36, under Chapter 705 of the Bar Association. They cannot advocate, and the same thing with the Smith Act, they cannot advocate the overthrow of our government, but yet they're doing it every day. And we're going to show you why here in a few minutes. But Article 3, Section 1 created the court. We fill it. We pick who's supposed to go in there. They're not supposed to, we're supposed to, but they're stacking the deck in these elections. Article 3, Section 2 gave the court jurisdiction subject matter. When the 11th Amendment came about, the 11th Amendment stripped that court, which now made this court an administrative court. Why? Stop and think. Like I told you people, everything is pre-planned for the future. They go back here, they make laws for future references, future dates. They set things up to run the way they do on how we're running it. They set it all up. This 11th Amendment was no different. They stripped them courts for a reason. Granted, there was court cases. But remember, lawyers and judges create two sets of case laws. One for, one against. Whichever side they need it, they have a case law for that side. They create two sets of case laws. When we try to bring the case law in, it shows that the judges do not have immunity. They throw in the 11th Amendment. Oh, well, we can't hear the case because we can't hear any case by you in law and equity, and you can't commence prosecution, so we're protected under the 11th Amendment. I've got 3 case rulings based on that exact saying. You can't bring a claim in because the 11th Amendment says, as a judge, I cannot hear this case. I can't make any judicial decisions. This case is about law. It's about equity. I can't hear it. And you can't commence prosecution. But yet they turn around and drag us in every single time into these courts. And there's nothing in the 11th Amendment that said that is for them to use. But remember what it says. Commence or prosecute against one of the United States by citizen of another state or by citizen or subject of any foreign state. Ladies and gentlemen, I just sit here and showed you the moment they took their oath of office, they relinquished their national citizenship. They're no longer Americans. They're foreign nationals. They're federal citizens. I just sit here and showed you the 1945 International Organization of Immunities Act. These people come under international. They're foreigners to you and I. That's like we were sitting here talking earlier, off stage. There is no way that one of us could sit down and have created all this stuff so well and bring it in here as garbage and be able to turn around and back it up as like we have through the statutes at large, through the USC codes, which basically comes off the statutes at large, because the USC codes, what they did in 1925, or they tried to do, is you had revised statutes and the statutes at large, and the USC codes were nothing more than to organize it, put it in its proper headings, putting it in its proper settings. This way, you didn't have to go through all the articles to try to find it. They just put it in its own category, and that's what the USC codes was all about. Calorizing everything, putting it in order. For the statutes at large, you have to start with volume 1 and go up to volume 221 to find what you need. So they sit down and made it simplified. But ladies and gentlemen, everything came out of the statutes at large. Everything came from Congress. Now, bringing this up, let me show you something here that's going to sit here and really shock you more than anything. National Lawyers Guild, Communist Party, Union Calendar, number 1078, 81st Congress, 2nd edition, House Report number 3123, September 17th, 1950. Committee to the Committee of the whole House of the Senate of the Union in order to be printed. Committee on Un-American Activities, U.S. House of Representatives, 81st Congress, 2nd session. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the people. These are the people that heard the case. These are congressmen. These are public officials. Here's the Congressional Record. Do you think the people in 1953 and in the 1960s, when they were under that McCarthyism, when it was anti-American, and that they was out here dragging in movie stars out of Hollywood, and they were dragging in the American people, dragging them into courts? Do you think for 1 minute that they knew that their attorney that they were forced to hire belonged to the National Lawyers Guild at the time they had to hire him? The prosecutor belonged to the National Lawyers Guild. The judge belonged to the National Lawyers Guild. And you're being charged for being a communist. Ladies and gentlemen, these are congressional records. This is why the Bar Association is running a monopoly. in these courtrooms. This is why they do not want us to bring any of this stuff up, because we will expose it for what it is. They can't afford to have us walk into these courtrooms. That's why they're shutting us down. That's why they are in total disregard of the very laws that they created against you and I. This is your worst nightmare of what we're dealing with out here. It goes down down at the bottom. It gets in. It shows that the Bar Association backs and supports these people. A lot of these bar members, because I was in Washington, D.C., we was in the Department of State. We talked to an attorney up there in the Department of State. We got talking to him about foreign sovereign immunity. By the way, I asked him, "You're an attorney, right?" He says, "Yes, I am." I says, "Are you any member of the National Lawyers Guild?" He says, "Yeah, we all are." I said, "You are?" He says, "Yeah." I said, "Good." I handed him this document. I said, "You're telling me that you're a communist?" That ended our conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, we're being scammed in the worst way.
Did he know?
Yes. We wasn't supposed to know this. We surely were not supposed to walk in with the Congressional Records and hand it to him. The trip that we made in D.C. here a couple years ago that was on YouTube, when Carl Weston and I walked in, we had some people with us, and we were talking to the Ways and Means Committee, one of the gentlemen that was a clerk. His comment was, "I can't believe you people are doing this. It is about time you people show up here and start bringing the Congressional Records in and start shoving it in their face. You're proving the entire fraud." And this is where we brought up.
I can't understand. If Congress knew that the Lawyers Guild was part of the Communist Party, why didn't they get rid of it?
Because you had a lot of people sitting down there that are attorneys. This is the sickness of these people. You got your own people that are going before exposing and making an issue. Yes. Then they turn around and they create the Smith Act. They create the anti-Congress or anti-communist document. The very people that's writing out anti-communist document and the laws and the Smith Act are the very same people that hold the communist position in this country. It's easy to point your finger, "Oh, you," whenever it's them that's doing it. They got to draw attention from themselves. And they want to sit down and call the guys in little white jackets for us, whenever they're the ones that has distorted all of this. Ladies and gentlemen, if it wasn't for the fact that we're pulling it out of Congressional Records, this could almost be a joke. It could almost be a joke. But it continues. And it explains more and more. They've been exposed. This is what we're up against in these courtrooms. This is why people like myself are coming out, and Joe and Paula is coming out. This is why we're speaking out. That's why we're sitting here doing these shows. That's one reason why I was asked to come up here. That's one reason why I do AIB radio on TalkShoe, to help expose this. But because of being able to sit down and talk it and being able to show the documents, it's two different things. And it's come down to where we're now able to show what we're talking about. Not just walk and talk, it's show and tell. Anybody can sit here and tell you anything about anything as long as they don't have to show you any documentation. But when we're sitting here showing you the documentation of all this, and there are reports on all this, ladies and gentlemen,
put up the beginning of that again and tell people, look it up for themselves.
Yes. Well, the thing of it is
everybody should read this.
Well, we're going to put it up on your websites, and we've had it up on our websites.
Okay, we'll put it up on our website. Everybody should read this.
Yes.
FreedomFirstParty.net. We will put this up so you all can read it.
Yeah, FreedomFirstParty.net. Now, let me bring something else up to you. 1940. They knew in 1940 of the New World Order. Congress knew. Here's the Congressional Report on it. They knew it was going to be England, and they was talking about Israel. They knew that we was going to have an overthrow. Congress knew in 1940, proceeding in debate of the 76th Congress, third session. And what was the top heading of that? Congressional Records. These people are holding closed doors meetings and passing laws and making decisions without the knowledge of the people. They did that Federal Reserve Act without informing the people of 1913. They sit here and gave one time $60 billion, another time $58 billion, and another time over $13 billion in gold bullions between 1927, 28, and 29. They gave it to Germany to start World War II. Was the American people abreast of this? No. Was the American people even told? No. 1929, what they have? Stock market crash. Why? Because our system allowed the Federal Reserve to embezzle and take everything out of this country. Then they passed a law that the American people couldn't have it because they had to cover the debt, so they had to come up with some more. Then because there was no money, they had to put a price tag on each and every one of us for labor. Because they promised and guaranteed everything over to the Federal Reserve that you own everything, including the people. So they had to put a price tag at $1.8 million. That's why it's significant for you to understand the Federal Reserve Act, State of Emergency, Social Security, and the Alien Registration Act. Because of the birth certificate and the footprint, but that also went back in, was supposed to keep them from going under the communist side of this thing.
But if the government owns everything, isn't that what a communist country does? The government owns everything?
Then the government is supposed to sit down and see that the people are provided for. If you own, then you provide. That means everybody's on an equal basis here. Technically, if you really understand a true communist government, you're right, they own everything. And that means everybody's equal across the board. No one's higher than the other. Everybody's equal. Everybody has the same pay. Everybody has the same house. Everybody sits here and has different jobs, but everything is equal. Ladies and gentlemen, 1940, they knew. Now, let me bring up something else to you. Why we're also having a problem. This is the court registry investment system. cash in, into the court. It goes to the Treasury. Nonprofit withdrawals, court, distribution, cash out. Federal Reserve in the middle. Let me cut it down a little bit.
So the court picks our pockets, gives it to the Federal Reserve, and then the Federal Reserve gives kickback to the courts.
Exactly right. That goes back and proves exactly what Raja is sitting here saying about the banking system. The moment you sign your name, they sell your signature, it goes to the Federal Reserve, and it gets dispersed out. Not one thing goes back in to pay the public debt. Ladies and gentlemen, every single court case has a QSIP number. Every single court case gets put on the stock market and is sold. And you wonder why you're losing in these courts? You wonder why we're not winning?
Because judges aren't impartial, they're profiting.
Exactly right. When you're walking into that courtroom, it is a bid for a stock market. You are a commodity to be bidded on. What's the net worth for this person? What kind of price can we get out of them? What kind of profit can we make? How much labor can we get? If we stick him in jail, we steal his signature, how much work can we get out of him for nothing to cover his signature? Why do you think these prisons have workshops? Why do you think they're sitting here making everything for basically for nothing while they're selling it for top dollars and they're still soaking the system? Because remember what we sit here and said? Is the Social Security, the federal government pays the state $1 million per fiscal year per person. Now, stop and think about this. You're drawing Social Security. You're drawing a VA check. The moment you go to jail, oh, well, we can't pay you your disability because, well, we got to support you. So therefore, you're not entitled to your disability. And we now have to take that. You're already getting $1 million a year from me. And I'm not sitting in jail. You're already collecting $1 million. Ladies and gentlemen, this is stuff that has not ever been brought out and people don't comprehend. They want to sit here and bleed us. This came out of their court system. This came out of California. This is across the nation of what they're doing in every single court. They're selling your signatures. This is nothing but human trafficking. This is how they sit here. We're nothing but sheep. And a lot of people are sitting down saying, we're sheep. That's exactly right. You're sheep. Like I said, if it wasn't for us being able to pull this stuff off of their sites, pull it from their records. Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever heard of RICO? Racketeering Enterprise? The gentleman that created RICO, when he created it, it was given to the public officials on D.C. They sit here and said, you realize the United States falls underneath us? Yes, we do. He said, every agency, every part of government falls under RICO because it's a racketeering enterprise. The Bar Association is part of this. You get your cop out on the street. Now stop and think here what we're talking about. Your cop out on the street is a paid employee. What's his job? His job is to do what? Stalk. He is to stalk you. He is to sit here and follow you. He's to sneak up to your house, look in your windows, sit here, knock on your doors. If you and I did this, we would be arrested for stalking. We would be charged for trespassing. But now you got the cops coming in. They're set up to sit down and pull you over. They're taught to sit here and to act like they're fear of their lives, but they got the guns, they got the nightsticks, they got the dogs, they got the padding, they got the cameras, and they're in fear of their life. And here you and I are out here by ourselves going up against these guys, and they got a gun pulled, and they're in fear of their life, and we're unarmed. But then you go to the prosecutor. Now remember what we just sat here and said about the Bar Association. And if you get into their code of ethics, their code of ethics says they are to have integrity. They're supposed to be honorable. They can't mislead, misrepresent, misconstrue. They can't put misleading facts before the court. We did not write these books. They did. These are their regulations. Now you're sitting in court. So now you got one state employee, whether it's county or city, he's still paid by the system. You got another employee paid by the system to prosecute you. You got a judge sitting on the bench that is paid by the system to sit here and hear your case. And when you have to hire an attorney that is part of the Bar Association, again, we sit here and showed you under Title 36, Federal Bar, is that they are a corporation. But if you check in your own local state, North Carolina, it's under Chapter 84, under the state general statutes. Under the administrative code, it's Title 27, the Bar Association. It is an agency of the state. It's part of the state. And these people are part. So now, you've got a police officer that is paid as an employee. You've got a prosecutor that is paid that is an employee. You've got a judge sitting on a bench that is paid that is an employee of the state. And you've got an attorney that is an employee of the state. And you really expect to get a fair trial. You really expect to get a fair trial. Can we say the word communism? This is the point. This is the whole point. The proof that they belong to the Communist Party. This is why they don't want us coming in by ourselves. That's why they don't want us representing ourselves. That's why they don't want people like me coming in and representing you. Because they cannot disbar me. They cannot hold me to the same guidelines and threatening me with my income because I'm not part of the system. You're not part of the system. This is the biggest problem that we have and the biggest understanding that we need to get out here among ourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, that's why we need to get organized a lot better than what we are. You have groups out here trying to restore the republic. They're trying to bring the republic back in. And don't misunderstand the difference between a Republican and a Democrat. Because Franklin Roosevelt said here, and when dealt with a Republican and a Democrat, he put it under democracy. So it doesn't matter which way you go, you're dealing with democracy here. There's only one form of government, that is republic. That falls back under the Constitution. That's what we're trying to restore. That's what we're trying to bring back in. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're sitting here showing you is stuff out of their own paperwork. This is their stuff that they wrote, that they created. There's no way that any one person like myself could sit down and have thought this stuff up and went back in to 1917, and I'm only 59 years old, and write stuff up from 1917, or go back to 1867 and sit here and write this stuff up in 1867. I am not an immortal. I only have one life. There's no way that I could have sit down and have created any of this. All of this came out of their records. But when it comes down to the courtroom, they don't want to hear it. Why? Because they're running the 11th Amendment on your side of the courtroom. I don't have the judicial power to hear your argument against the state. Therefore, you can't bring a defense into this courtroom because I cannot hear it. That's exactly the crap that they're pulling on us. That is stuff that you need to understand, and we need to start fighting. Because when the moment the judge tells you, I can't not hear your argument, then the argument is that you're running under the 11th Amendment. If you're running under the 11th Amendment, then you can't hear this man's over here. And that means that all this stuff that he brought in is frivolous, unintelligible, and incomprehensible, because you cannot use his paperwork in this courtroom because it violates the 11th Amendment. Think about what we're getting into, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lot of information here. This goes back into every case, whether it's traffic, whether it's criminal, whether it's child services, whether it's IRS. It's all the same under the Federal Reserve Act, State of Emergency, Social Security Act, and the Alien Registration Act. Them 4 documents is the key to all of this. And these 4 documents is the court does not want you to bring any of this into the courtroom. At the moment you do, it exposes it. Get into freedomfirstparty.net. Get into the website. And get into AIB Radio on TalkShoe ID 48361. We're going to have Section 5 coming up here shortly afterwards.